When my daughter got married, I wasn't invited. She said, "You always made things about you." So I sat alone that day, wore my best suit, and recorded a video message blessing her anyway. Her husband found it later. He cried. She never said sorry, but she did come back. My name is Arthur. I'm 68 years old, and for the last 5, I've been a widower. My wife Eleanor wasn't just the love of my life. She was the sun my small family orbited. When we lost her to an aneurysm that came on as suddenly as a summer storm, the light went out. For my daughter, Chloe, and me, it felt like the gravity that held us together just switched off. We started to drift. The problem is, I didn't realize how far apart we'd gone until the silence became a definitive statement. The wedding invitation never arrived. I knew she was engaged, of course, to a good man named Liam, a software engineer, quiet, steady, with kind eyes. He was the sort of man you'd pray your daughter would find. I liked him. I'd met him 4, maybe 5 times. Dinners that felt more like polite, sterile interviews. I tried to connect. I really did. I told him stories about my time as a civil engineer, building bridges, the physics of stress and load-bearing. I thought it was common ground. Looking back, I see the glaze in his eyes. He was being polite. I was just talking. The call came on. A Tuesday. I was trying to fix a dripping faucet in the kitchen, my knuckles scraped raw, the ghost of Eleanor whispering in my ear that I should just call a plumber. The phone rang, and I saw Chloe's picture on the screen. A wave of relief washed over me. She hadn't called in 3 weeks. "Hey, sweetie, everything all right?" I said, trying to sound casual, not desperate. "Hi, Dad." Her voice was tight, stretched thin like a wire. "Yeah, I'm fine. Listen, I have to talk to you about something." I leaned against the counter, my heart starting a slow, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. "Okay, it's about the wedding." A pause. I could hear her take a deep, shuddering breath. I knew, right then, the way a man knows the ice is about to crack under his feet. "We've decided it would be better if you didn't come." The words didn't compute at first. They were just sounds. Foreign. I must have misheard. "What was that, sweetheart?" The water was running. "I think I missed—" "Dad, please don't make this harder," she cut in, her voice cracking. "I can't have you there. I can't." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. It was a physical presence in my kitchen, pressing in on me, stealing the air from my lungs. "Why?" I finally managed to whisper. The word felt like swallowing glass. "Because it's my day," she said, and the words tumbled out in a rush, a torrent of stored-up resentment. "Just once, I want a day that isn't about you, that isn't about one of your stories, or one of your big speeches, or you holding court and turning it into the Arthur show. Every graduation, every birthday, every holiday since Mom died, you make it about you, about your grief, about your memories. I love you, Dad, I do, but I can't spend my wedding day managing you. I can't. Liam and I, we just want it to be simple, quiet." I slid down the kitchen cabinets until I was sitting on the cold linoleum floor. My head was spinning. Was that what I did? I thought back. Her college graduation. I remember giving a toast at the family dinner. I talked about how proud Eleanor would have been. I told the story of the day Chloe was born, how I held her and felt my world shift on its axis. I thought I was honoring her mother's memory. In my mind, it was a tribute. Had she seen it as a hijacking? The Christmas she brought. Liam home for the first time. I spent most of the evening telling him stories about Eleanor, showing him old photo albums. I wanted him to know the family he was joining, the woman whose spirit still filled every room of that house. Had I made him a spectator to my own grief instead of a guest, the accusations landed like punches, knocking the wind out of me because I could see the kernel of truth inside each one. I wasn't trying to steal her spotlight. I was trying to keep her mother's light from flickering out. I was trying to fill the gaping hole Eleanor had left behind with words, with stories, with anything to keep the silence at bay. And in doing so, I had drowned out my own daughter. I don't know what to say, Chloe, I stammered, my voice hoarse. "Just say you understand," she pleaded, her voice thick with tears. Please. But I didn't. Not then. All I understood was a profound, bottomless rejection. A cold so deep it felt like it was freezing my marrow. So I lied. For her. I understand, I said, and the line went dead. I didn't move from the floor for over an hour. The dripping from the faucet was a steady, mocking metronome counting down the seconds of my new, solitary life. The day of the wedding arrived under a perfect, cloudless sky. A beautiful day in June. I knew the ceremony was at 2 p.m. at a botanical garden across town. I imagined the scent of roses and freshly cut grass. I imagined Chloe in her dress, Liam waiting for her, his kind eyes full of love. The thought was both beautiful and agonizing. I spent the morning wandering through the house, my own personal museum of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. There was the chair Eleanor always sat in, the indentations still faintly there. The photos on the mantelpiece of a smiling, happy family. A man, a woman, and a little girl. Where had that man gone? At 1 o'clock, an idea took hold of me. A need to do something, to mark the day, to participate in some way, even if it was from my self-imposed exile. I went to my closet and took out my best suit. Charcoal gray, wool, the one I'd worn to my own wedding 45 years ago. It was a little tight in the shoulders now, but it still fit. I put on a crisp white shirt and the silk tie Eleanor had given me for our last anniversary. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like a man going to a funeral. I took my phone and propped it up on the mantelpiece right next to a picture of Chloe on her first day of school. A gap-toothed smile and a backpack almost as big as she was. I hit record. I looked into the small dark lens. I didn't have a script. I just had a hollowed-out cavern in my chest where my heart used to be. Hello, Chloe. Hello, Liam. My voice was shaky at first. I cleared my throat and started again. I know I'm not there with you today, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for my part in it. I paused, gathering my thoughts. This wasn't about defending myself. It wasn't another Arthur story. This had to be for her. Chloe, I said, my eyes welling up. From the moment I first held you, you have been the best part of my life. There's a memory I have. You were maybe 4 years old. We were at the park, and you were trying to learn how to swing by yourself. You kept kicking your little legs, getting frustrated. You fell off once and scraped your knee. You cried, but you got right back up. And then you did it. You started pumping, going higher and higher. And the look on your face, it wasn't just a smile, it was triumph, pure, undiluted joy. You looked over at me and yelled, "I'm flying, Daddy!" A tear traced a path down my cheek. That's all I've ever wanted for you. To fly. Today you're starting a new flight with a wonderful man. Liam, son, thank you. Thank you for loving my daughter. Protect her heart, make her laugh, fill her life with so much joy that it overflows. I looked over at the photo of Eleanor. Your mother. She would have been so incandescently happy today. She would have loved you, Liam. And Chloe, she would have looked at you standing there so beautiful and strong, and she would have been so proud. She is so proud. I know she is. I let out a long, shuddering breath. I'm not there to give a toast, so I'll give it now. To Chloe and Liam, may your life together be a beautiful bridge, strong enough to withstand any storm. May you always be each other's safe harbor. I love you both. I'm sorry. And I wish you all the happiness in the world. I reached out and stopped the recording. The silence rushed back in, heavier than before. I saved the video to a folder on my phone titled simply, "For Chloe." I had no intention of ever sending it. It was my toast, my blessing, my apology, spoken into the void. It was my way of being a father on the day I wasn't allowed to be one. I took off the suit, hung it carefully back in the closet, and sat in the quiet, empty house for the rest of the day, waiting for the sun to go down. The weeks that followed were a study in emptiness. I didn't hear from her. Not a text, not a call, not a postcard from a honeymoon I didn't know the destination of. I saw photos pop up on social media, posted by distant relatives, there she was, laughing, dancing, cutting the cake. She looked radiant, happy. She was flying. I felt a pang of something that was equal parts pride and profound, soul-crushing sorrow. She had her day, free of me. And it was perfect. I started to believe that maybe she was right all along. Maybe the best thing a father like me could do for his daughter was to simply disappear. I didn't know then that the video I made, my message, in a bottle, would one day wash ashore, and I couldn't have possibly imagined the storm it would bring when it did. The 6 months that followed the wedding were a long, flat expanse of silence. I fell into a routine governed by emptiness. I'd wake up, make coffee for one, read the paper, and then the day would yawn open before me, a void to be filled. I took up walking. I walked for miles, through neighborhoods I'd never seen, past parks full of laughing children and young families. Each scene was a small, sharp jab, a reminder of what I had lost, of what I was not a part of. I never called her. My pride, or what was left of it, became a fortress. She had set the terms of our relationship, and the primary term was distance. To call her would be to beg for scraps from a table I wasn't welcome at. I told myself it was dignity. It was just loneliness wearing a different coat. The silence broke not with a phone call, but with the shriek of tires and a sudden, violent impact. It was a Wednesday in December. The roads were slick with an icy rain. I was driving home from the grocery store, my mind a million miles away, when a pickup truck ran a red light. I remember the sound of crunching metal, the spiderweb crack of the windshield, and a dull, heavy thud in my chest as the airbag deployed. I woke up in a hospital bed. A nurse was checking my vitals, her face a mask of professional calm. A sharp, searing pain radiated from my ribs. "You've had a bit of a nasty crash, Mr. Davies," she said softly. "You have a concussion and 3 broken ribs. You're very lucky." Lucky? I didn't feel lucky. I felt like an old, battered piece of luggage someone had left by the side of the road. They asked for an emergency contact. The only name I gave them was Chloe's. I had no one else. She arrived a few hours later. Her face was pale. Her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and something I couldn't decipher. Annoyance? Fear? Liam was with her, a steadying hand on her arm. He looked at me with genuine concern. "Dad." "My God. Are you okay?" Chloe asked, her voice trembling slightly. She stood at the foot of the bed as if a magnetic force were keeping her from getting any closer. "Broken ribs," I said, my voice a dry rasp. "The doctor says I'm lucky." Liam stepped forward. "Arthur, we were so worried. The hospital called. We came as fast as we could. Is there anything you need? Anything we can do?" His kindness was disarming. It felt like a warm drink on a cold day. "My car's totaled, I think, and my phone, it was in the car. It's shattered." I thought of the video, a secret I thought was safe, now likely destroyed along with the device. A strange sense of relief washed over me. "Don't worry about that," Liam said immediately. "We'll handle the insurance. And the phone, look, I'm a tech guy. Sometimes the data is recoverable even if the screen is a wreck. I can take a look at it if you want. See if I can pull your contacts and photos off the memory chip." "Oh, I don't know. It's probably not worth the trouble," I said, a little too quickly. But Chloe, practical as ever, jumped in. "No, that's a good idea. His whole life is on that phone. Numbers, passwords for bills. It'll make things easier." She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the problem. The logistics. I was a situation to be managed. And so my phone, the small black box containing my final secret testament to my daughter, was handed over to her husband. 2 days later, I was discharged and sent home with a list of instructions and a bottle of painkillers. Chloe had arranged for a meal delivery service for the first week. It was efficient, impersonal. She came by to drop off some groceries, stocked the fridge, and left within 15 minutes. We talked about my pain medication schedule and the follow-up appointment with my doctor. We did not talk about the wedding. We did not talk about anything. That night, my doorbell rang. It was Liam, standing on my porch alone, holding a small laptop. "Arthur," he said, his expression serious. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, my ribs protesting with a sharp twinge. "Is everything all right, Liam?" Did you get the numbers? Off the phone? I did, he said, walking into the living room. He didn't sit down. He just stood there, looking at me with an intensity that made me uneasy. I got the contacts, the photos, and I found something else. Arthur, I found a video. My blood ran cold. A video? I feigned ignorance, my heart hammering against my bruised ribs. He just nodded, his gaze unwavering. It was in a folder titled For Chloe. I shouldn't have watched it. I know that was an invasion of your privacy, and I am truly sorry. But I saw the title, and I watched it. He swallowed hard, and his kind eyes seemed to glisten under the lamplight. I saw your toast. We stood in silence for a long moment. I felt exposed, as if he'd read a private diary I never knew I'd written. It was not meant for anyone to see, I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. It was for me, just a way of saying goodbye to a moment. She needs to see it, he said, his voice firm. No, I said, the word coming out with more force than I intended. Absolutely not, Liam. That would make everything worse. She thinks I make everything about me. What will she think of this? A secret, manipulative performance? Please, just delete it. Pretend you never saw it. I can't do that, he said, shaking his head slowly. What I saw in that video, that wasn't the man she described to me, the man she said she couldn't have at her own wedding. He finally sat down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Arthur, for months all I've known is her side of the story. A father who is overbearing, who sucks the air out of every room. She's my wife. I love her and I supported her. But what I saw on that screen, that was just a man who loves his daughter and was heartbroken. She needs to see the man I saw. A wave of weariness washed over me. I was too tired to fight, too sore to argue. It will only cause more pain, Liam. Maybe, he conceded. But the silence right now, this cold, polite distance, that's not painless, Arthur. It's just a slow poison. For both of you. He stood up. I'm showing her. I have to. I just felt I owed it to you to tell you first. He left. And I was alone again with the ghost of my wife and the impending doom of a confrontation I had actively avoided for half a year. I don't know how he did it or what he said. All I know is that 2 days later my doorbell rang again. This time, it was Chloe. Alone. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, her face pale and drawn. She walked past me into the living room and turned to face me, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She was a fortress of her own. He showed me the video, she said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. I just nodded, leaning against the doorframe for support. Why? She asked, the single word sharp enough to cut. Why would you do that, Dad? What was the point? To make yourself a martyr? To film yourself in your suit so you could prove how much you were hurting? So someone would eventually find it and I'd be the villain? The accusations were exactly what I had feared. They still stung. It wasn't for you, Chloe. It wasn't for anyone. It was for me. I needed to do it. I put on the suit, said the words, and gave the blessing I wasn't allowed to give. And then I put it away. It was my way of letting it go. Letting it go? She let out a sharp, humorless laugh. It doesn't look like letting go. It looks like holding on. It looks like you standing in this shrine to Mom, making my wedding about you and her all over again, even when you weren't there. That is not what it was, I said, my voice rising slightly. I pushed past the pain in my ribs, fueled by a sudden spike of anger. It was about loving my daughter on her wedding day. It was the only way I knew how. What did you want me to do, Chloe? Sit here and drink myself into a stupor? Curse your name? I wore my wedding suit to honor the commitment you were making. I talked about your mother because she is a part of you, and she would have been bursting with pride. Every memory I have of you is tied up with her. I can't untangle them. I don't want to, you see? She fired back, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. You're doing it right now. You can't just talk about me. It's always me and Mom, me and your memories. When do I just get to be me? I'm sorry, I said, and the words felt inadequate, like trying to patch a dam with a single piece of tape. I'm sorry if my grieving got in the way of your happiness. It was never my intention. Since your mother died, I feel like I've been speaking a foreign language that no one understands. I'm just trying. I'm sorry I'm not doing it right. My admission seemed to deflate her. The anger drained from her face, leaving behind a raw, painful vulnerability. She sank onto the sofa, the same one where she and Liam had sat for those stilted dinners, and buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. I didn't go to her. I didn't try to comfort her. I had learned in the most brutal way possible that my comfort was not wanted. It was smothering. So I stood there, a few feet away, a father separated from his crying daughter by an invisible wall we had both spent years building. The video hadn't fixed anything. It had simply taken the polite, sterile plaster off the wall and shown us both the rotting foundation underneath. She cried for a long time. When she finally looked up, her face was a mess of tears and regret. But her eyes held a new flicker, of something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't understanding. It was confusion. The certainty she had held onto for so long had been fractured. She was lost. I have to go, she whispered, standing up without looking at me. She walked to the door, her hand hovering over the knob. She turned back, just for a second. Liam, he cried when he saw it, she said, her voice barely audible. He said he wished he'd known that man before our wedding. Then she was gone. The door clicked shut, and the silence that returned was different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy, filled with unspoken words, with the ghost of a toast, and with the gut-wrenching possibility that we had both been terribly, tragically wrong. Chloe's departure left a different kind of silence in the house. It wasn't the hollow, ringing silence of rejection I had grown accustomed to. It was a heavy, thoughtful quiet, thick with the residue of our confrontation. It was the silence of a battlefield after the fighting stops, where both sides are left to survey the damage. I replayed her final words over and over. He said he wished he'd known that man before our wedding. It was a dagger, but I wasn't sure who it was meant for. Me, for not being that man, or her, for not seeing him. My ribs healed slowly, the dull ache a constant reminder of the fragility of things. The meal delivery stopped, but something else started. Liam began to visit. At first, it was under the pretext of necessity. He'd bring over my mail, help me with the online insurance forms for the car, or just drop off a coffee. He was careful, never mentioning Chloe or the video. Instead, he asked me about the bridges I'd built. He'd pull up a chair in the living room and listen, genuinely fascinated, as I explained the principles of tension and compression, how the delicate balance of opposing forces is what creates strength. For the first time in years, I felt like someone was listening not just to my words, but to the meaning behind them. During one visit, he pointed to the old record player in the corner. "Does that thing still work?" "Like a charm," I said. Eleanor loved her vinyl. He browsed the collection, a curated library of my wife's soul: Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Simon and Garfunkel. He pulled out a worn copy of Bridge Over, Troubled Water. "This was my mom's favorite," he said softly. We listened to the entire album without saying a word. As the final notes of Song for the Asking faded, a comfortable quiet settled between us. We weren't father and son-in-law. We were just two men from different generations, sharing a moment of peace. Through these quiet visits, Liam was building a bridge of his own, spanning the chasm between Chloe and me. He was showing me the man my daughter had chosen, and in doing so, he was showing me a path back to her. Chloe remained a ghost. I didn't see her, didn't hear from her, but her presence began to filter back into my life in small, almost imperceptible ways. A bag of expensive, dark roast coffee, my favorite kind, would appear on my doorstep, left by Liam, but clearly purchased by her. One afternoon, Liam was helping me fix my internet router. His phone rang, and he answered it. "Hey, honey." "Yeah, I'm at your dad's." "No, he says he's fine." "Yes, I will remind him about taking the painkiller with food." "Okay. Love you too." He hung up and didn't acknowledge the conversation, but I heard it. I heard the care, buried under layers of pride and hurt. She was checking on me, using her husband as a proxy, unable to breach the wall herself, but unwilling to stay completely on the other side of it. The real turning point came in the spring, on a day I always dreaded, the anniversary of Eleanor's death. For the past 5 years, I had observed the same solitary ritual. I would buy a bouquet of yellow roses, her favorite, and drive to the cemetery. I would spend an hour at her graveside, talking to her, telling her about my year, about how much I missed her. It was a quiet, painful, and deeply personal tradition. That morning, I put on my coat, picked up the roses from my kitchen counter, and walked out the front door. A car was parked at the curb. Liam was in the driver's seat. Chloe was in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. My first instinct was a flash of something close to anger. This was my day, my time with Eleanor. It was the one sacred space that hadn't been touched by the drama of the last year. Liam got out of the car. "We thought we could give you a ride," he said gently, "if you'll have us." I looked at Chloe. She finally turned and met my gaze. Her eyes were full of an emotion I couldn't name, a mixture of apprehension, sorrow, and resolve. I looked at the two of them, a married couple, waiting for me. And I realized that my solitary ritual was a part of the problem. It was another way I had been holding on, another thing that wasn't shared. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak, and got into the backseat of their car. The drive was silent. At the cemetery, the three of us walked across the damp grass to the simple granite headstone that read, Eleanor Davies, beloved wife and mother. I placed my roses at the base, my hand trembling slightly. I waited for the familiar wave of grief to wash over me, but it was different this time. It was buffered by the presence of my daughter and the man she loved. We stood there for a long time. I assumed Chloe would say something, share a memory of her mother. But when she finally spoke, her voice quiet but clear, she wasn't talking. To me, she was talking to the stone. "Hi, Mom," she began, her voice thick. "I miss you so much." She took a shaky breath. I think I messed up. After you left, I was so angry, so lost. And Dad, he was just as lost, but I couldn't see it. All I could see was my own pain." She glanced at me, just for a second, then looked back at the grave. "He was just trying to keep you here with us, with his stories, with his memories. I thought he was trying to take up all the space, but he was just trying to fill the hole you left. And I punished him for it. I was selfish. I hurt him because I was hurting." She started to cry, silent, tears streaming down her face. Liam wrapped an arm around her and she leaned into him. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm trying to be better." She never said, "I'm sorry, Dad." She didn't have to. In that confession to her mother, I heard everything I needed to hear. I heard the regret, the acknowledgement, the reason why. It was the apology she couldn't give to me, but that I could finally receive. I reached out and put my hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She just cried. And for the first time in a very long time, we were grieving. Together, not apart. We drove home in a much different silence. It wasn't empty or tense. It was calm, settled. As we pulled up to my house, Chloe turned around in her seat. Her eyes were still red, but they were clear. "I'm making dinner." "On Sunday," she said, her voice steady. "Liam's trying a new lasagna recipe he found. It'll probably be terrible." A small smile touched Liam's lips. "You should come. Around 6. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was an invitation. A simple, practical, wonderfully mundane invitation. It was life. It was a beginning. "I'd like that very much," I said. That Sunday, I walked into their home for the first time. It was filled with their life, their pictures, their furniture. It wasn't my house. It wasn't a shrine to the past. It was new. The lasagna was, in fact, delicious. We talked. Not about the wedding, or the video, or the fight. We talked about Liam's work, about a movie they'd seen, about my plans. To finally fix the leaky faucet in my kitchen, it was awkward and clumsy, like learning to walk again after a long illness. But it was real. I learned to listen more. I learned to ask questions about their life instead of just offering stories about my own. I started to see Chloe not just as my daughter, but as a woman with a life, a career, and a husband she adored. And I think, finally, she started to see me not just as a walking collection of memories and grief, but as a man who was still here. She never said sorry, but she came back. She brought me into her new life, and in doing so, she gave me a new one of my own. The wounds are still there. Scars like that don't ever fully disappear, but they don't ache anymore. They are just a part of the story, a reminder of the weight and stress a bridge can hold, and the quiet strength you find when you finally learn how to